And coming up next, Mofya of the Draper Network, Irina Litchfield of Percival, Alon Goren of Draper Goren Holm, Stojanow of Meta Change Capital, and Mark Mullen of Bonfire Ventures, and Ben Lakoff of Charged Particles, shedding some light on just how venture capitals really approach crypto and blockchain projects. Let's see what they have to say.
Well, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here today and to be moderating this panel. My name is Mofya. I'm the director of the Draper Venture Network, an alliance of venture firms around the world. And I'm pleased to have joining us today Mark, Ben, Alon, Irina, and Nikola, who are very accomplished investors in the crypto space, very much in the opposite of me, who knows very little. So I'll be asking the questions and they'll be the experts giving the answers. So I'm really excited to be part of this conversation and to learn more. So what we'll do is we'll do some introductions around the room. What I'll ask each of you guys is to say who you are, what you care about, and one thing that people wouldn't know by Googling you. And then we'll jump into the conversation. So I'll start with, my screen says Mark. So start with Mark.
Hey everyone, this is great crew. It's so exciting to be even part of the conversation. And Sid, as you mentioned, yeah, maybe there's some experts on here, but it is moving so fast, as we all would agree, that it's pretty hard to remain an expert without spending all of your time on Cryptolandia. I run Bonfire Ventures. We're now raising our 6th and 7th funds. We have always only focused on B2B software, and we consider blockchain to be software essentially in some ways. And we have been investing here primarily in Southern California, but have branched out quite dramatically over the last couple of years, affected by COVID in a good way. Prior to that, I was an investment banker for 20 years, and I spent time living in Paris, London, and New York. You wouldn't find on Google that I have worked on deals in 30 different countries. So I've really had a good chance to meet and greet and hang out with and work for and learn from an incredible number of different entrepreneurs, not only in terms of the businesses they focused on, but really where they lived, and from different countries, which has different things that go with it. And as you know, crypto is borderless, and that's informed some of the thinking that I have around this area.
Awesome, thanks so much, Ben, Mark. Ben, you go next.
Hey guys, Ben Lakoff here, calling in from New York public Wi-Fi, so apologies if it's a little in and out. My background is in finance, jumped into the more entrepreneurial blockchain space full-time in 2017, co-founder and business lead at Charged Particles, but I'm also a very active angel, done over 50 angel investments over the past couple years. And so I have the unique viewpoint of being both from the operator role, raising capital, advising a number of startups in the space, early stage founders raising capital, as well as the investor in a lot of these deals. For me, what you probably wouldn't find on Google, well, it depends. You can probably find most things these days. I'm fluent in 3 languages and avid traveler, so I'll stick with Mark on the travel thing. Been to over 80 countries and still love traveling around. So happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Alon.
Oh, you're going around in a circle. I was expecting to be last, and then I was hoping I could come up with something more exciting. But hi guys, Alon Goren. I'm one of the founders of Draper Goren Holm. We love being the first check into early stage blockchain startups. So extremely early, and have been in the space for a while, and love it. Mark joked that you have to be kind of, without being full-time in crypto land, it's impossible to know what was going on. But I am full-time, and I feel like every day I discover shit. And I'm like, how did I not know this was going on? So it's I think that's a sign that the space has kind of become ubiquitous, and we've arrived in a way, right? You can't catch everything. So happy to be here. One of those, I guess the weirdest thing about me that most people don't know or discover is that as a teenager in my early 20s, which, was over 15 years ago now, I was in a bunch of punk bands, and my first business was a punk record label. So you find some of those videos and pictures. They're pre-iPhone, thankfully, so not too many to float around.
Yeah, it's pretty weird that you were a teenager in your 20s. That's also weird, but anyway.
In my late teens and early 20s. But,
teasing you, buddy.
Well, thank you so much, Irina. Next.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, guys. I was so looking forward to going to Los Angeles and doing this in person. But we're well trained, and I believe that it's still productive, and it's just such a pleasure to see everybody. My name is Irina Litchfield. I'm a partner at Percival Capital, and I care about bettering the world. And I've been in crypto industry for now 8 years, and one thing that you couldn't know about me by Googling me is that I have I'm an artist, and I created several paintings. One of them behind me, several collections of paintings, my apologies. But, I've never sold them or anything like that.
That's awesome. And that's a beautiful painting right there. Thank you, Irina. And Nikola.
Hello, my name is Nikola Stojanow. I am the managing partner of Change Capital, which is very similar to Draper Goren Holm. We like to invest early into startups. We definitely enjoy the venture studio approach. I am the previous co-founder of Eternity Blockchain, so I would say that we know our fair share of the technological aspect, and when it comes to scaling ecosystems, accelerators, and everything around that. We're currently focusing on working with the European Investment Fund in order to set up the first Eastern European fund to focus on blockchain technologies. Besides that, I'm a partner in a fund that focuses on early stage startups in Bulgaria and Eastern Europe again. What you wouldn't know about me is that I used to train lots of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then unfortunately, because of what Mark mentioned, out, and I haven't been able to focus too much on that, but I'm picking that up again. And that would be me.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikola. We got so many hardcore people here, languages and martial arts and arts. This is awesome. So I'm really curious for you as an investor about that first moment when everything changed for you. And I'd really love to hear that story. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you with when you were like, oh, this is a real thing and I'm going to be investing in this? And we'll go in the same order. I really do want to hear those stories. I'm very curious about it. I'm pre that moment. So I really want to know, what was that moment for you? Start with Mark. I think you're muted, Mark.
Per my instructions, sorry. Just to be in this environment, I've been pretty lucky. Frankly, I think it's a funny but good story. Fred Wilson's a good friend of mine, and he's always been early crypto, and I used to make fun of him. My bad, right? And he and I actually, I won a golf bet playing him, and as a joke, and just to get back at me, I thought it was a joke. He didn't think it was a joke. He goes, I'm going to pay you in Bitcoin. And in order to get paid, you need to open up a Coinbase account. And this is back in 2014. And I remember going, that's such BS, Fred. Like, just pay me the money you owe me. Like, why do I have to go through this whole hassle? And And so I did. And I opened this Coinbase account. You have to connect your account, as you know. And so the rest was history. I didn't go crazy then. I was still kind of making fun of him and it. But that was my first real introduction to getting involved in buying some tokens. My next lucky break, which informs a lot of what we're doing in the investment side, is have invested with before and worked together before with the founders of Figment.io, if you know the staking platform, the Web 3.0 development platform. In 2017, Lorian, the founder, and I were talking about starting a fund to look into some crypto stuff. And in putting that fund together, he and his team started to put the fund together, started looking at some investments, and decided it'd be better and more of an opportunistic way to take advantage of it to actually start a company, which became Figment. And that was when, my own ability to talk to those founders and kind of talk about even though 2017 doesn't seem like a long time ago, it is in Cryptolandia. And just really talking about what they perceived as the future for infrastructure and why blockchain and the decentralization and all the buzzwords I could throw together here are really going to be the future. And having said that, so we invested with them. I led their first 2 rounds, and I'm on the board of Figment. And they've luckily grown up dramatically, and are really in the heart of all what's happening. And but I would say that really about a year ago, I drank the Kool-Aid from the perspective of, in talking to my 14-year-old son, explaining to him what he was about to witness, which I felt was the complete transformation and change of, I was only focused on one area at that point, the complete transformation of the world's current financial system. And that it is going to be completely transformed by what we are starting to witness at this time. And so once you make statements like that to yourself, or you hear yourself say that, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you dive, then you literally, as many of you probably have gone, you go over the edge. And since then, we have been really just focused and really have a personal belief in that's informing some of our investments.
That's awesome. So 2017, you started investing. How many years was it between the golf incident and you investing?
Well, the golf incident was at the end of 2014, in 2015. So it was a couple of years. And we have not made a lot of investments because we only make 8 to 10 investments a year, and we still do more traditional SaaS software type stuff. But we've been really looking deep into how we consider ourselves picks and shovels investors. What's behind building the blockchain, the tokens, all the type of activities that's happening in the market. More so than us being on the front end. We don't do consumer facing. We're not investing specifically in tokens. Particularly just behind and being in the picks and shovels of the industry.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those stories. I like the 3 different stories and how they were kind of getting you deeper and deeper into.
Yeah. And then you go over the edge.
No turning back now.
Yeah.
Ben, what's your story?
Yeah, so like many, the first time I heard it was from my sister in probably 2014, 2015. And I was working at JP Morgan at the time, and I told her to stop playing around with internet money and buy the S&P 500 index fund like a normal person. So she never lets me live that one down, obviously, for doing what I do now. But the time I really started taking it more seriously was late 2016. And it was a developer friend of mine that bought some Ethereum. And he was talking about this as a way of something to try around and play, this new internet computer. He explained it in this nerd speak way that didn't make any sense for me. But he said it went up like 20% in a week. And I was like, well, I don't know, here's, buy me some as well. And then it went up. So I started paying attention to it. And it was around the same time, one of my first angel investments was in a crypto exchange as well. So this was early 2017. And get a little bit more in the space, the more you have financially invested at that time.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's interesting that it seems to be a person close to you, at least in both your stories, that made you trust that there's something there, even though it seemed silly at the time, right?
May I ask a question, Sid, just to interact a little bit with?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. And I'm asking Ben because you work for JP Morgan, you work for clearly a more traditional financial player who still thinks Jamie Dimon that Bitcoin is bullshit. And so I was trained in finance. As I mentioned, I was an investment banker for many years. I bought that's what I did, bought S&Ps and stuff. And do you feel the way I felt or feel now that the transformation of the financial world, the industry itself is going to be changing, is just being changed out from under our feet?
100%. Yeah. And that was the thing. That was the start of it. And, Chris Dixon always says like the next big thing sounds like a toy. It does, right? It's a silly nerd thing that people are doing on the weekends or whatever. But no, I have my CFA. I'm very much an asset allocator thinking about these things. So at first it was more of like this potentially uncorrelated alpha or asset that adds a lot to your portfolio, put it in terms of portfolio construction, but like it's not just that, it's this whole new thing. And there's a reason why people say you're down the rabbit hole. It's like every little aspect under this, you say crypto these days, well, there's a semantics issue, right? And this is all of us with our diverse backgrounds and interests all can find a home within this space. And that's why investing in this space is so interesting. You come from whatever the background you have, you can probably find the Web3 version of that and be able to apply your specific knowledge to that little niche and do really well.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And I'd love for us to double click on a little bit later on what are those different areas of investment in the big, huge crypto world. But Alon, let's hear your story.
Yeah, I think that I met some of you, Sid and Mark, back in the day, probably, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years ago when I was starting a crowdfunding business. Actually, 2012, I think, is when I quit my day job at Amazon to start a social fundraising business. The word crowdfunding didn't exist yet. And we wanted to essentially do what people were doing in the crowd sale style fundraising they're doing these days in crypto on the internet back then, but being idealistic young techies that didn't know securities laws, we had no idea, at least at the early stages, maybe when we still had our day jobs, that we were breaking securities laws. And so we went into it kind of pissed off that like the regulators said we couldn't raise money on MySpace. My partner and I both met each other working at MySpace. And so we were like, you should be able to raise money on the internet the same way you sell tractors on Farmville. And it just, smart lawyers and friends of ours stopped us from doing that in the way we wanted to. But we met lots of very interesting and amazing people along the way. We provided the technology. And one of those people was Adam Draper, Tim Draper's son. And he launched a thing called Boost Funder. So he wanted to help people raise money on the internet. Very quickly, he shifted focus and did a thing called Boost VC. And so in tandem, while we were building crowdfunding platforms and learning about payments technology, and companies like Stripe were not even launched yet, we heard about Bitcoin from Adam and from other people. And at the time, the word blockchain wasn't being used. People were talking about launching Bitcoin companies. Coinbase was a Bitcoin company. All of these companies in the Boost Accelerator were Bitcoin companies. We'd meet them, talk to them, and we decided to mine Bitcoin in our office, thinking maybe that's the solution to micropayments on the internet. So we wouldn't have to pay the Visa rails. And almost immediately, aside from getting yelled at by our landlord and causing all sorts of trouble, we realized, oh, it's not ready for mainstream. And we set it aside. And I never thought of it as an investment opportunity at that point. I literally was like, this is a thing that can change the developing world. It can change the world in all sorts of ways. But I didn't think of it as an American, like it was better than our current system or different than our current system. I just went, we already have digital money. I never go into the bank. Like I get paid, it goes into my bank. I use a card, whatever. So to me, it was like this thing that was going to change the rest of the world, but it wasn't an investment opportunity. And then sometime around 2016 or so, we shifted focus with our conference. We rebranded our conference, which was called Crowd Invest Summit, to Crypto Invest Summit, because at that point we had gone down the rabbit hole. I had told enough people that Bitcoin was going to change the world and watched its price go up enough to go, shit, I should be participating in this from an investment standpoint. I should be investing in my friends' companies that are being built in this space. And I got lucky in that, Sid, I'll give some credit to the Draper Venture Network. I was a CEO in that network because the Draper funds had invested in my company. Then for the first time ever, I became a venture partner at Wavemaker. And I'm still very close friends with Eric Manlunas, and I love that man. And I got to participate in Draper Venture Network events from the side of the investor. And I realized how much value it added for us. And when I, decided to go sort of all in on crypto, one of the first people I called was you and Gabe at the time and Tim, and they asked me to join the network. So we're super fortunate to be here there. But the crypto part came from the side of being so fed up with regulation from the crowdfunding space, and finally finding something that would work, at least internationally, and still being worked out. But
Awesome, and thank you for the shout out. We're so pleased to have you. Irina, I'd love to hear your story.
Alon, I love your story. By the way, I did come to one of your first when you rebranded. I flew. I believe you brought Articher, James Articher, and he was giving away free tickets. So. And doing lottery thing, and I thought, time to go to LA, and it was really great. That was really great event. I really appreciated that. I remember Brock on the stage saying, "Just buy a little bit of crypto, the smallest amount you can."
You know what? I should have mentioned the first time Brock actually was on stage, it was still a crowdfunding conference. And he filled Tim Draper's shoes. Tim got sick. He called me that morning and he's like, I'm calling my daughter. I'm calling my friend Brock. One of them will take my spot as the keynote. And Brock came on stage and took his spot and was pointing at his shoes. And his shoes had a QR code on them. And they were like registered on the blockchain or something. This is 2016. Yeah. And everyone thought he was absolutely insane, of course, including everyone, including me. I thought it was cool. Like, it was like, wow, that's kind of neat. But what the hell is he talking about? Like, it made no sense to almost any of us. And we were already into Bitcoin. Like, I was into Bitcoin, but the fact that he was talking about shoes on the blockchain, cut to today, that's a thing now,
Yeah.
Like, can I give you that are doing that, right? That are putting shoes on a blockchain.
Yeah. And Irina, I'm sorry, Alon, I was at that conference as well, the one in 2016. I was down at the LA Convention Center. And let me draw a parallel, which is the convention center is terrible. It's gray and old and dark. And your stage was brown and the chairs were brown and green. It was, and I was there because you had me speak on a panel as well. So I was backstage when Brock was there, and I've known Brock for a long time. And I thought he was crazy too up there. And it was just early, right? It just wasn't, you're just like, look at all these jokers. What's everybody doing here? Now, counter that to, for example, the Miami crypto conference back in June. If you went to that, you're like, oh my God, like just the facilities, the talent, the excitement, the people there, how quickly it changed in that 5-year period from almost being second thought and illegitimate in some ways to obviously the other side. So, sorry, I just want to point that out.
I like to say we used to be the crazy people that talk about this strange.
Well, we still are. We can still do that, right?
A little, but now we're kind of cool, crazy people. Not just not off to the side. I have no idea what you're talking about. Kind of like, okay, I don't understand, but keep on talking. It's all right. We want to. Depending bear market or the bull market, it all.
Yeah, I want to ask about that, and maybe Nikola, I want to hear your story, and then maybe we'll segue into this. A lot of people make the comparison with the internet, the rise of the internet. Early 90s through to the 2000s, and I'd love to get your views on where we are with crypto. Are we in 1995? Are we in 2000, just before the crash, or like where we are. But let's hear, Nikola, your story, and then maybe give your thoughts first, and then let the others chime in.
I'm happy to pick up on the second point too. But my story is a little bit different than the others because I came from not hardcore banking, but the pharmaceutical industry. So I was developing markets in MENA, Asia, and Pacific before I got absolutely fed up with corporate and realized that I wouldn't be able to tolerate that for the next 40, 50 years. Then I became an entrepreneur, like pretty much every European young person with a little bit of money and a couple of dreams. I went to Berlin, got lost in Berlin for a couple of years, did a couple of startups there, which surprisingly developed quite well. But in the meantime, I had this friend that I've known since childhood. Like both of us were Bulgarian born, but we emigrated into Germany after socialism ended in the early 90s. And, so we have known each other for quite some time. And he was always sleeping on my couch when I was traveling and working, because I was stationed in Belgrade, I was stationed in Moscow, I was stationed in Hong Kong, and so on and so on. And that guy always came out of nowhere, slept on my couch for a couple of days, went to some weird conference, spoke there, and then moved to the next thing. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, I code, and I'm working on with colored coins, and like me and my homie Vitalik are right now discussing updatable algorithms." And this is pre-Ethereum, by the way. And he was like, "Let's do a mining facility in Belgrade, outside of Belgrade, because we had access to incredibly cheap facilities and mining electricity." And out of this, that was exactly at that moment when Bitcoin went, I think, up to 700 or something like this. And then it crashed. And at that time, we're like, "Yeah, no, there's no way we're going to do this. Forget it." Now, fast forward a couple of years, like a little bit later, I was in Berlin. I had scaled my last medtech startup. And again, this guy pops up and he's like, "Hey, by the way, we have to meet for a beer." We met up. He reminded me that he sent me a couple of years earlier to this, my first Bitcoin, which I still do hold very dearly on an old phone. And he started telling me how, Ethereum would run into issues with scalability and how he had thought of something new and something more scalable. And that was kind of the beginning of Eternity. And we scaled Eternity quickly. One thing that I realized at that time was that if you build a layer 1 blockchain, you're going to run into some big issues, which are you need somebody to use that technology. Like with Bitcoin, we had adoption to a very, very different level because, a lot of people were mining it. It was the first one. And, people got interested in it because they used it as an alternative to money for whatever kind of different reasons. But the second and third generation of blockchains, like you needed a hardcore community. Ethereum succeeded with this, but there's also a lot of projects that did not succeed with this. So I focused on the ecosystem part, and we built an accelerator program that we run on 4 continents. We went through 4,000 startups, I think, between 2017 and 2019, and ended up investing into, I think, roughly 28, of which still about 20 are alive and doing quite well, which I'm very happy about. And out of this idea, then it grew larger and larger. Why only invest into one ecosystem? Why only focus on early stage startups that are like really, really idea stage? Why not move this a little bit towards proper VC involvements? Why not go agnostic? Why not build Europe as an alternative to the US? So you would have like multiple pillars of funding, technology, ideas, networks, and ecosystems in general, where you would still be able to push everything out rather than just have one place where everybody goes to. And out of this kind of, it morphed through different levels. And that's how I got into, I think, doing roughly 30, 40 angel investments, either together with my partners or by myself. And just moved into this direction. But the biggest issue that we found was that still the majority of European investors were not ready for something like this. So, like family offices, institutional investors, anybody was still not there yet. So we set on to find the proper people and to push us through on a European level, which is how we finally got to where we are right now. I'm very, very proud that it only took 2 years to get this actually up and running. So this would be kind of my story how this happened. And in the meantime, I've met Irina, I think in 2017 or something. We crossed paths the first time. Alon, I haven't met you yet, but Joseph is a good friend of mine, and we've grown to do a lot of things together. And it's been amazing, actually. And I'm very, very happy that I've become part of like this US, European, Middle Eastern, Asian kind of global network right now. And I'm also very excited to meet the rest of you, Sid, Mark, and Bednar, hopefully as soon as possible. To answer your question, the second one, when it comes to where we're at right now, straight up, I think, Ben, you mentioned this in the beginning that, that there's so many things that are happening which are just blowing you away on a daily basis. This is still going to continue happening. We haven't even touched any kind of universal earn kind of income things. We haven't touched play to earn yet. We haven't touched really digitalizing or putting real world things, like if it is a phone, if it's shoes from Brock back in the days. I mean, he has been living ahead of everybody else anyways for a long time, but I believe that this is not even 1999 yet. We're still, DeFi is picking up right now. Cream has been hacked, 4 times now, or in forks? And all those things that are happening right now are just giving us opportunity to learn more, to implement better, and then hopefully to pave the way for the future in a better way that it will allow us to do not the mistakes that we're doing right now in a more concrete way, and that will allow us to not over-regulate, hopefully, but really get blockchain to become like this Web 3.0, this establishment, not to drop the, like all the bad parts that it has, and to show people in the majority of the world what an impact the technology actually has. So for me, 1997, 1998, but still not 1999.
Okay, so we're at 56K dial-up and very pixelated.
Roughly. You remember the sounds, right? Like the dial-up sound.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at right now.
Interesting. Any other thoughts from the rest of the crew? We pretty much agree that's where we are.
Yeah, extremely early, I think. If you're using ICQ, you still have your username number memorized, right? Like that early.
I actually have forgotten mine. I don't know if you remember yours, but a couple of months ago we had a discussion with one of my partners, and I couldn't remember my ICQ number.
ICQ was a big kind of personal thing for me too, because I through a family member knew the founders, and I was still in junior high at the time, I think it was, but I had an early number. It was like 104025, which was number early. But that's how ingrained in my mind that is, like how early that is.
When you have one number to remember, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to
add, so like for people listening, yes, it is early, like overall in the space, but that's also like saying, NFTs are going to be the next big thing. That doesn't mean that everything will go up because we're so early. Like there's certain things within the space, because it is so broad, that are extremely .com era, like way crazy overvalued sort of madness. But like as a whole, the space is incredibly crazy early. So just want to throw that caveat in there in case people hear it and they think, oh, I should just buy anything because it's so early, it's all going to go up, right?
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about timing,
this was no financial advice.
Every single time since I've been in the industry, I hear 2 things: we're too early, too late. Bull run, bull run, I'm too late. Every bull run, it's been, I'm too late. Oh, I've already passed opportunity. Bear market is going to explode. It's going to zero. I don't want to touch it. So it's just funny to me. What's interesting about our industry, our blockchain industry, is that we have this calculated cycles, and the every single time we churn through that 4 years, the more repetitive it becomes, and it's fascinating. To me, it's just its own beast, and it just keeps on bringing amazing innovation, amazing cycles, and keeps surprising us every single time. I have no idea what's coming next, and I don't think any of us can know what's going to come after next happening. I have no idea.
Do you mind explaining that 4-year cycle for folks that are not familiar with the industry and what drives that cycle?
Well, do anybody wants to jump in, or you guys want me to take
Go
this?
ahead.
It's Happening is an event that is designed into a white paper. It basically makes it much more expensive to mine for the data, and so therefore it's natural built-in inflation, but really it's a deflation because it increases the value of Bitcoin. And so everything in the crypto industry works based on Bitcoin happening. Now, one day there are hypotheses that there's going to be a separation and decoupling from a performance of Bitcoin, and eventually an industry of blockchain will have its own cycles and valuations. But for now, everything is coupled to it on a back-end analysis. If anybody disagrees, please do. But overall, a big picture, basically, that's where you are. So if you're new, learn about happening. This is the first step to understanding the cycles, and then just follow rabbit hole from there. And remember, buy some Bitcoin. It's not an investment. It's just a learning tool. You can go to Coinbase, buy $100 instead of going to whatever dinner, and then just watch and learn.
Great.
I wanted to ask and add, Sid, I wanted to ask and add if anybody wanted to, back to the where are we in the timing of everything.
Yeah.
You know, Netscape was started in 1990, and so let's call it 30 years to get to where we are today. The internet, essentially, the consumable internet, the layer one, essentially. And what I would say that we're very early, like everybody says, let's call it the 90s, between 90 and 94 when Netscape went public. But I believe that if you were to try to copy that this will happen in a faster time frame than 30 years. The acceleration, the technology available, the fact that everybody in the world can be a developer, can develop on top of these things, on these networks. Open source software wasn't around in 1990. All these elements that should accelerate to the point where we won't look back from 30 years from now and say, yeah, we're all, blockchains everywhere. It's going to be in a much faster way. And the other thing is, I think that the talent out there, let's call it the engineering talent that's being produced and is currently working, there's a lot of movement towards this space. And I think that's going to accelerate the transformation, and it will have ups and downs. It will have its 1997 moment, its 00 moment, its 2007 moment, and it will have its 2021 moment. I mean, there's going to be ups and downs, but I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, I think every cycle is way faster, because I can remember going to a post office to buy a cashier's check to send in the mail to buy something on eBay pre-PayPal, right? And then PayPal, and then Amazon selling books and all these things. And 10 years ago, when I quit my day job to do that crowdfunding business, at that time, I worked at Amazon, and Amazon Video on Demand was a thing that was just getting started, and people were, filmmakers were pissed off that their films would be downloaded on the internet because the quality, like I'm an artist and I can't have a pixelated version of this beautiful art I just made on the internet. So, and today my kids, literally my kids said, wait, when I was a baby, you still used DVDs? Like they didn't even think it was something we used in their lifetime, right? So if you think about how fast we went from selling books on the internet, selling other things on the internet, now everything is consumed on the internet, including, media. It's pretty insane how fast that works, and it's happening in this space as well, and it's going to happen faster and globally. Lunar Crush, one of our portfolio companies, launched this week. And for somebody in India to earn Lunar tokens by participating in their economy has the same exact level playing field as an American. So they're earning Lunar tokens that, compared to their lifestyles, are probably much more valuable than the folks in the United States. So the whole world will catch up faster too, I think. I think that's a beautiful moment we're in right now.
Do I need to be writing down Lunar tokens somewhere?
Not investment advice. When I talk about stacking lunar tokens, which by the way I say stacking loonies, and that's a whole story in itself. I talk about earning them on Lunar Crush, not buying them on an exchange or anything. That'll clarify. But you know, I'm an investor. Full disclosure.
Right, and nothing we say here is investment advice. But having said that, if somebody is new and they're looking to get a lay of the land, you know, Irina, you mentioned go buy $100 of Bitcoin on Coinbase and learn. What are some of the other areas that people can be looking at to learn or even to just start investing because it's happening? And I'll open this out to the floor, anybody who kind of has some advice there.
I think it's really like people shouldn't just start investing without having any knowledge of the market. So you should go ahead and do your homework. Actually, you should understand at least a little bit about the technology. Irina's suggestion was great, but if you want to just invest into shitcoins, excuse my French, then I think there's enough platforms where something like this is possible, where you can throw $100 at something and then, you know, at $100 at 100 projects and then pray that something happens. This is not what we're doing. Like, it's about really finding like the proper gems, like the raw diamonds, and then build them together with the team into like a full functioning project. And this is not easily done by anybody. So a lot of knowledge and experience has to go into this. But I believe that early people should stick to the basics, should buy a little bit, like Irina, you mentioned very, very nicely actually, but still not jump into too much stuff, because rug pulls, any kind of other things that are happening, just bad projects, scams and so on, are so well set up in today's time that a lot of people are falling for them, and those pitfalls are out there. And I mean, like Telegram handles, Telegram groups, I've seen entire Telegram groups with the same amount of users being copy pasted, and then, you know, like a address is being released before the sale was there, and you're gone.
It's about like you're talking about. It's about knowledge. 2017, people would be making investments based on how many people are in a Telegram group, and I would tell them, I'd say, you do realize that you could go on Fiverr and buy thousands of people for a Telegram group. Like, what? How is that good investment advice?
It's not expensive. Also, right? It's like
it's freaking Fiverr.
It's ridiculous, and I remember knowing that because when I was in the crowdfunding world, people were talking about that person has a lot of Twitter followers, so their campaign's going to be successful. And I'd say that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And I went to a friend actually, and I went on Fiverr and for $10 bought him like 10,000 Twitter followers. And he woke up the next morning, he's like, "Where did all these followers come from?" And I explained to them how easy it is to manipulate. But that's why I think, you know, you're absolutely right with the experience and time and buying a little and participating. And people who, you know, when you're buying a token, and if you think about it as representation of ownership or participation in a startup, you're essentially buying like a public stock of a startup. And a startup is the most volatile thing in the world, because even the best startups in the world have gone through many cycles where they thought they might be going out of business, or there's 2 months until they're running out of runway, and they get saved by an investment or a deal or something. And that happens multiple times in a startup's lifespan. And that's why it's never been great for a startup to be a public company. But now in crypto, we're learning that. And only super experienced people like maybe Mark on this panel, has been an early stage investor for the longest of all of us, understands that all of us, and why, you know, I can't just decide I'm an early stage venture capitalist and be good at it the first day I come in. You know, the same way I suck at trading crypto, and I recognize that in myself, so I invest in companies long term. But people need to learn that and understand that, and not follow things because there's Twitter followers or there's Discord followers. Maybe if you're going to follow people with great experience in the space, right? You don't just learn these lessons overnight. And we're all learning it in the crypto space. I won't pretend like I'm the greatest in the world at some of these judgments too, but you know, that's why I focus on people who are experienced. people who I don't love the full anonymous teams, like the pseudo anonymous stuff. I still need to meet the people, know they're real and stuff like that. And you know, I'm different than some, but I will get goofy on NFTs and all these things. But you still want to know the people are real, still do the research, and spend some time. I know a lot more today than in 2017.
So in much the same way we talked about origin stories, I'd like to hear some war stories, you know, things that went bad that you learned from, as a cautionary tale to others. What are some of the experiences that you've had?
Blockchain terminal. Oh my goodness. So did that boo-boo hurt?
So blockchain terminal for people, yeah, if you Google that, I wasn't an investor in it. I wasn't affiliated with it. I think they may have been maybe a sponsor at one of our early conferences. But if you look into that, I mentioned being pseudo anonymous or anonymous. That was one where the founder just changed their name, because if you've looked up his original name, you would have seen that they had been in trouble for securities fraud in the past, right? So that's a lesson in, you know, one of the lessons in maybe fraud in crypto.
It was that, you know, that person recruited he ended up being scammer, like the fake people, identity, all of that. And he recruited really serious people behind him, and the whole industry. It was really amazing. It really goes back to the point to where you have to do so much due diligence, and you have to see that people have been in the industry for a while. And you know, it's not the size. There's just the matter that even if you have expertise, you did a good. We invested just a little bit, you know, just a little bit, but that one hurts, you know.
Is that though a lesson? That's a lesson in one person did a scam, I think, to find out that person because some of their co-founders were very real. I don't know if most people could have figured that out in their due diligence. Is that more a lesson in diversification and not putting all your eggs in one basket, maybe? Because I think that could happen anyway.
We spread the seeds, you know, do our best, do due diligence, and then spread. I think a great way if you are an accredited investor and you don't know the industry, find a hedge fund that does a great performance and that, you know, spends their time in due diligence and actually invest in, you know, find the thesis that you kind of like, works for you, and invest in that way. Or to me, it's kind of more like a go to casino and gamble, you know, throw some seeds around. If you have some disposable income, you know, that's also a fun thing to do. Some people can take 100,000 and just go have fun, you know. So I think that's a fun way to look at it, not as a investment. I have to make the life decision, you know, but kind of like, okay, well, excuse my language, it looks like it's pumping and people are excited about it. Let me just, you know, spread it all over and see where the roulette hits and all of that. So again, only if you can, if you go to Vegas and you gamble for $100,000, go and do that. That's a lot of fun too. I've had a couple of friends that participated in that way and actually worked out very well as a strategy.
I mean, I will say that the two pieces of financial advice I've explicitly given family members over the last year have been the worst financial advice I've given, because when Bitcoin was at around $4,000, I told one family member, absolutely do not buy Bitcoin on a credit card. You're crazy. And then the other thing I told that person and a couple other people is, don't buy Dogecoin. This happens every 6 months or so. It's bullshit. Don't pay attention. And look at where they are today. So maybe I'm wrong, but I still think a more disciplined approach, and I'm a very undisciplined person with most things in my life, but with investing, a more disciplined approach is probably the smarter way to go, especially if, again, you're not expecting to lose the money outright.
In 2013, my husband Justin went to Dogecoin for fun and got a bunch of Dogecoin, and of course it was just such a joke. And you're right, that one also kind of hurts, but also it's a good reminder. We never know, you know, we cannot predict predict the way capital markets perform, and we cannot predict the way crypto performs for the most part.
I think you especially can't predict crypto. You know, when we were talking about the halving and things like that, most of this space is not driven off of rational things. It's you know, much more driven off of things like Wall Street bets than the rational decisions in the short term. But there are some responsible ways to participate. I think Mark had something to say, and I cut him off.
Too many war stories. You want to talk, Sid? I don't know how much time you have left. You want to talk a little bit about some of the things we're looking for as investors?
Yeah, I'd love to actually pivot to that. I'm not sure how much time we've got, but I really want to hear, you know, where you're focusing your time and attention and why, so that, you know, listeners can get a sense for, oh, this matters, and maybe I could look into this and learn some more. Maybe you can start, Mark.
Well, again, since we focus on B2B, you know, really behind the scenes software, it doesn't really open up to individual investors, but, you know, we're looking for companies that are providing solutions and services to companies that are providing solutions and services to us as individuals. So, for example, we're about to announce an investment in a company that provides accounts payable and accounts receivable and payments and tax calibration for businesses. So, for example, not blockchain. I mean, CoinTracker or Bitwise, for example, that help you with your taxes personally. Imagine all the accounting firms out there right now who are just getting dumped. That their customers are dumping stuff on them and said, "Hey, by the way, I had my Coinbase account was pretty active this year. My Robinhood account." And they don't have the solutions themselves, these accounting firms, to actually manage the information that's coming in, how to account for it. So we're investing in a company that's providing that solution for accountants, banks, it's others, you know, the B2B side of it. And so we're really excited about that. There's been huge influx. As a matter of fact, we had so much demand on an NFT taxing platform that we're taking deposits to get back to them. I know it sounds kind of silly, but, you know, we can't, you know, we're saying we'll take a deposit to get back to you in terms of how we're going to, you know, the solution will work for you. So we're looking for that behind the scenes type stuff that help is going to be part of the proactive regulation of the industry, for example, right? The good part of what's going to be the proactive regulation of the industry. As it becomes more regulated and you can feel comfortable being in it from a regulatory and a legal standpoint, it's only going to grow more. And so that's one area that we're focused on, for example.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Nikola, I'd love to hear from you, especially with, you know, where you're located, what kind of opportunities you're looking at there, but also globally. You're on mute. You're mute.
Here we go. Sorry. Yeah, I think it depends which pocket I use. If it's an angel investment, if it's my partners, if it's an official fund investment. I do enjoy, as I mentioned, and I think everybody else, early. And what we have mostly done over since the beginning of this year until now has been in the DeFi space and in the tooling space, which I find incredibly interesting personally, but also luckily I overlap with my partners there, because, you know, all this interoperability that we're seeing, all those bridges, you know, all those things that are happening, you need a lot of tooling for that. And the tools right now are still incredibly underdeveloped on the different platforms. I mean, Ethereum is not the answer to everything. So tooling has been incredibly interesting. I can only recommend this for other people. Security in the blockchain space, also highly interesting. I have a project right now where Andreas Antonopoulos is advising, and like even he's blown away, which doesn't really happen often if you know the guy. You know, like any kind of reaction from him is super interesting. But so security in general is something nice. Game like earn to play gamification I like, but I don't see yet the games that I would play. Rather than, you know, like Axie was quite an interesting approach, Lunar now also, but I still am looking for like the proper gaming in a real Unreal Engine where you have MMORPG like Diablo or something like this, where you can identify as the player and you can really go towards the masses. And I have been very interested mostly in DeFi when it comes to the staking and liquidity provisions, vaults, different LTVs and borrowing and lending, and really seeing how the different products react on the different infrastructures. Because if you build something on Polygon and you launch it on Near, or another team launches it on Near, it's very good to see how different each ecosystem actually reacts and interacts with the projects. So those were the things that I look most to.
Awesome, thank you, Nikola. Some pretty heavy-duty areas you're looking at there. Just a clarification on security. Are you looking at token security, or is it kind of security as a whole for the system?
SecTech. So security, like security per se. When it comes to like the European funds, we have to, because there are limitations to what we can invest in. So security or security-like tokens are something that we're comfortable with. But in general, I tend to stay away because I've seen multiple approaches, not that convinced yet. And I would like to give it a little bit more time before like you're able to trade them properly, you're able to use them, people understand the whole spectrum of how a security token should be used and can be used. So I would go with SecTech in this case. So, like hardcore, down the rabbit hole.
Awesome, thank you. Ben, what are you looking at?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the listeners have noticed that in the past couple of days, Facebook has rebranded themselves as Meta. So they've finally thrust this term into like the hearts and minds of a lot of people, probably strong opinions one way or another. But I think there's kind of two alternate futures. One, which, well, there's many obviously, but within this of a walled garden metaverse where you log into Facebook and everything is kind of Facebook IP or controlled by Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, maybe they allow NFTs or whatever, but still the value is accruing to the Facebook shareholders, which is not the individual users. And then there's the more open version of like the more decentralized, unstoppable, censorship resistant, all the buzzwords that blockchain offers, metaverse. So I subscribe more to the latter, or hope to. So a lot of the tools or projects kind of building around that vision. So that's quite broad, but by definition, so it would be things around that.
Awesome. Could you give a few examples just for the benefit of us kind of coming new to this?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I'll speak broadly just so I'm not name dropping different projects, but in meta version of like in the more open bit metaverse, everything that you interact with, the digital world you live, work, and play would be represented as an NFT. So you can do things like bundle these and take out a loan against them because they have a financial value. You can keep them for sale in real time across different platforms. You can rent them in a trustless way. You can bundle them in new, unique ways. So all of these new abilities that like digitization allows and is like thrusting financialization into all of these aspects are things that I'm very bullish with. I know those are like very vague by design.
So helpful, thank you.
Let me real quick just download you guys. So Percival Capital invests in a variety of blockchain projects. We invest in everything from tokens to equity, from early to mature stage. So if you guys, if there's a great project, we love to support, and we're known for contributing a lot to the growth and development of this industry. And so thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're actually almost at time. So before I ask your final question, Alon, I just want to say thank you to you guys for joining this panel. And I've learned a lot for sure, and I'm looking forward to learning even more as the conference goes on.
We're gonna suck you in.
Alon, the last question is for you. What's your prediction for 5 years from now? What are we seeing? What's happening?
Well, I think like Ben alluded to earlier, not just, I think it was Ben, is it just because we're early doesn't mean that every deal is a good deal, right? I think we're absolutely in these micro bubbles across our space. And even when people always point at the .com bubble and say that we're there with Bitcoin or say that we're there with Ethereum or whatever, the .com bubble peaked, I think, at something like $10 trillion, and we're not even there yet here. And what I will say, though, is we are in a bubble in all of these little things, right? I don't know if my Bored Ape is supposed to be worth as much as it is. It probably is not. It's kind of insane how quickly that happened, right? So, but I believe in it. I believe in NFTs way long term for collectibles, for financial products, for all these different things as well, not just, art and collectibles. So what I will say is that, there's probably going to be some cycles and things along the way I can't predict, but will this space, I don't know about 5 years, but 10 years from now be orders of magnitude larger than it is today? 1000%. So I'm holding my Bitcoin and my ETH and some of these NFTs forever, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alon. Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Nikola. Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Mark. This has been awesome. And looking forward to even more interactions with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.